Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Formula One 2021 My Driver Career Mode. I hope you're all having a great day. Today, we have the United States Grand Prix here at Circuit of the Americas. Definitely one of my bottom five favorite tracks to race at. I have never been a fan of this one. I'll tell you what, though, when it comes to stock car racing, I'm definitely more of an enjoyer of this racetrack when it comes to that form of racing versus F1. But coming into this one, trying to get some more R&D upgrades, and there's been some rumors from our car engineer that we are going to have some regulation changes coming next season. So he was recommending saving some resource points, but I was like, you know what? I'm not coming back to Haas next season, so I'm going to spend the resource points however I would like. Still don't know where I'm going. There is a potential Aston Martin route, so stay tuned to see what happens with that. But I can tell you that the goal is really to upgrade to a midfield team and then hopefully be impressed enough next season to where we can upgrade to a top team. So I felt like we've done well enough in the Haas to really take the leap forward to get to a midfield car hopefully next season. Unfortunately, we're going to be taking like a 20 place grid penalty or something like that in this upcoming GP at Circuit of the Americas, just due to myself swapping out a bunch of engine parts that we aren't allowed to use. So there you see the weather. It is going to be a quite wet race. As you can see, it looks like at the end of the race it's going to dry up potentially, but nonetheless, for the majority as of this point in the weekend, it looked like it was going to be a very long wet race for us here in America. So I was looking forward to that, to be honest, because I had been asking for a race where we start on the wets and then just have to deal with it, bear through the terrible conditions and hope that that just adds to the excitement here in Circuit of the Americas as we come through into practice number one. Confident with my pace. I've been really confident lately here with the car, just continuing to get used to the handling in this game, and it is so different. I didn't realize the difference between F1 2021 and F1 2020 until I went back to the Nitro Racing League and did our league races on F1 2020 after putting so much time in F1 2021. My favorite thing about this game so far is I've actually put more hours into F1 2021 already after like a month of release than I did in F1 2020 since that game came out till now. So that shows you how much I'm enjoying this game. This is my first attempt to come through the S's, and this is of course dealing with the understeer in the car, and I felt like I actually wasn't too far off through the S's right there. That was my biggest concern. I knew it was going to be a lot different going through there compared to past F1 games, and I definitely felt like though I got through there pretty well. So the overall laps I was running, it felt competitive. I didn't know if it was going to be good enough to be against our teammate of Mick Schumacher. Now, as we came through, though, out of the final turn, DRS enabled and overtake on the ERS, and it felt pretty competitive. We weren't, of course, just exceeding expectations, but we were hitting the marks that we needed to be hitting here with the target times and whatnot. And as we came through to complete that second lap, that was also in the green, and then same for lap 3. We were just setting really consistent lap times here, and as we came through out of the final turn on this third attempt, just under 0.4 of a second faster than our target time. So in the end of free practice 1, we did lose out to our teammate of Mick Schumacher, but he was on the soft tire compound compared to myself on the medium tire compound. As you see, by the way, it is a 30 grid place penalty, not a 20 grid place penalty that we will be taking for the Grand Prix. So we are guaranteed to be starting at the back of the field. We know that. We've taken a few grid penalties recently because at this point we're in the second worst car in the field. I really am not concerned about taking grid penalties, so I'm swapping out parts if I ever want to, just to get some fresh parts in the car. So now into free practice 2, of course, doing the quick practice program, getting those resource points built up for the programs I don't like to run. I don't really care if we're doing the tire management programs or the ERS management or the fuel management, so I always just sim those with the free practice 2 quick practice little thing. So now as we came through though into free practice 3, trying to set the fastest lap we can on the soft tire, and this lap felt pretty good. You can see right there in that S's towards the end of it, I definitely went a little bit wide, made a mistake, but we got through the penultimate turn pretty well. Definitely could have got through there better. I definitely gave up some time on my hot lap now through the final turn, even gave up a little bit of ground right there, but nonetheless, we come through to set a 132.514, and where would that stack up against our teammate of Mick Schumacher at the end of FP3? It would put us about a whole second and an extra tenth behind him. So that's concerning, but at the same time, I myself wasn't too concerned because I had been able to point out just in the little bit of the lap I showed in every little sector the time I was giving up and where it was happening. So I knew that we were coming into qualifying one. I definitely could find that potential second and an extra tenth to get to Schumacher here. Now, as a little bit different conditions with the time of day when it comes to qualifying one, the sun's kind of going down a little bit here, sunset, and it looks just beautiful. Look at the sun rays coming into the paddock right there. I love these lighting conditions at Circuit of the Americas for qualifying. So we get this lap underway here, just below 15 minutes left in the qualifying session. Hopefully we can get to Q2. That's going to be a bit of a stretch, but I feel like we do have enough pace in the car to make that happen. But my goal was, if we do get to Q2, I'm not even going to set a lap because we're going to just take the grid penalty, and I know I can't really do better than P15. So if I get to Q2, we're not even going to bother with it. But we came through out of the penultimate turn down towards the final turn, and felt like I had set a pretty good lap. I felt like maybe I gave up a couple tenths here and there, but it was almost as good as it was going to get. It was a 1:31.266. We bring it back to the paddock, and I could see right there we were 0.4 of a second off of Schumacher. So it is a bit of a stretch still. We have definitely improved based off of our mistakes in FP3, but now we have to go out and try and set another lap here and beat Mick Schumacher. Now, as we came through on our second attempt, a minute and a half left in qualifying, Sebastian Vettel there in the Aston Martin just in front of myself. I actually came out in front of Sebastian Vettel, but I ended up letting him go before the lap got started because I knew he was going to be way faster than myself, and I did not want to hold him up. But you can see we were gaining time. We got about 3.5 to almost 0.4 of a second better compared to our first lap, and by the time I came through into the final turn, about 0.4 of a second, nearly half a second improvement on our lap, which puts us just about even with Mick Schumacher here as we cross the line. And at the end of it, we would beat Schumacher here barely, about half a tenth ahead of him, and we make it to Q2 with P15. But like I said, I would not even bother setting a lap in Q2, so I would call it there myself. I would just go into Q2 and retire there. As you see, Nicholas Latifi, George Russell at the bottom of the grid as we get ready to go green here in the USA.
Welcome once again then to the United States Grand Prix here in the magnificent city of Austin. It was here in 2018 that Kimi Räikkönen delighted the world by winning for the first time in 114 races. There's always a record to be broken, so what, I wonder, is in store for us today? We have 10 turns to the left and 10 to the right here at the fantastic Circuit of the Americas. Overtaking opportunities into turns 1 and 12 at this anti-clockwise 3.6 mile track. But we may well see cars struggle to slow down there today as the wet weather does interfere with the low-speed grip. Also here, of course, is Anthony Davidson. Let's have a chat about McLaren. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
With the race minutes away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Lewis Hamilton lines up on pole position, and it's Valtteri Bottas that completes the front row. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Norris, Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, and Perez, Vettel, Fernando Alonso, Stroll, and Daniel Ricciardo, Gasly, Verstappen, they've taken a grid penalty, Mick Schumacher, and Räikkönen, Russell, Tsunoda, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty, Antonio Giovinazzi and the rookie, Ocon and Nicholas Latifi. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head to trackside for today's race.
Quite a few grid penalties, not just ourselves. We're not even at the back of the grid. We're P18 at our home race for the team, not myself, of course, being Canadian, but of course Haas being in the United States based. So hopefully we can put up a good performance for them. Look at the weather starting on the wet tires. It looks like in the last slot of the weather it's going to dry up. So we'll have to wait and see if that adds in a little bit of strategy or not here. Now, as I finally realized, so in the last episode I had the same situation and I had it in this episode. I was wondering where's the option to use a clutch and get to the correct RPMs, and I was so confused. Well, what happened is my settings for some reason, the simulation settings, I think it was, reset and put on assisted start. I don't know why. This is the second time that they've reset for some reason, and I didn't catch it this time, so we're not going to have it in this episode, but in the next episode it should be back to normal here as we get back on the grid, though. 5 red lights. Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas on the front row, and it's lights out, and we are underway here for the United States Grand Prix, and it's a tremendous start from Valtteri Bottas there. He's going to get alongside his teammate of Lewis Hamilton into turns 1, 3 wide in the background with the 2 Ferraris and a Red Bull, but it's Bottas going to the lead in front of his teammate of Lewis Hamilton. A great launch from him, knowing what's at stake at this point in the season. He has to beat Lewis here on out just about if he wants to win the title, after Hamilton had a big DNF, a mechanical failure in Japan that allowed Bottas to win the GP and close up the gap. And now here he is, a clutch start for Valtteri Bottas. If he can hang on to the lead and win today over Lewis Hamilton, that would be able to reduce the gap to 8 points. If Lewis still finishes second, anything below that, of course, is just going to help Valtteri more and give him the potential points lead if it all works out for him here today. Just about, what, 3-4 episodes it looked like it was over. Lewis Hamilton was running away with everything, and then Japan, the big DNF right there, and now he loses out on the start to Bottas, and it looks like this championship battle is not going to come to an end quite yet. For myself, we started P18, and we were still P18 by the time we went down this long back straight towards that heavy braking zone, still going a good 200 miles per hour, hit 199 right there at the end, going down into that 90-degree left-hand turn. So, definitely, let's get a few looks, of course, in just a moment at some of the starts there for a driver like Bottas, and I'm going to show you guys my start as well. But you can see just how treacherous these conditions are. The first time this season we've had to use the wet tires in a race. We've used intermediates back in the France GP, as well, of course, in Japan, but here we are now on the full wets here. And I underfueled the car quite a bit, because obviously you're going to gain all that back in the race, and actually definitely could have underfueled it even more than I did, but I decided to play it a little bit safe just in case, because with the approximate weather, you don't really know exactly when that weather is going to clear out, because it's not always correct. But now let's get a look at Valtteri Bottas' start there against his Mercedes teammate, the 7-time world champion of Lewis Hamilton. Right off the bat, you can just see he first of all launches just ever so slightly earlier than Lewis, and that is all it took right there, and that would get him ahead of Lewis into turn 1. Lewis still had a chance if he could have remained alongside right there, but they actually make a little bit of contact there, but no damage to Lewis's front wing, I don't believe. It didn't see anything fall off there, and it looked like he was far up alongside on that wheel to where the wing never got really touched by it. So here's my start, by the way. So lights go out, and I nearly just bin it right here. You're going to see the back end kick out a little bit, but it wasn't too significant. But we lose ground, of course, but I just sail it off into turn 1 of the inside, I believe, of Giovinazzi, and that would allow me to get a little bit of time back. But that wasn't over. It actually got a little bit crazy here as we went down into the S's here. You see Fernando Alonso, who's not waiting around whatsoever, and he is just going to blow right on by through the S's. An aggressive move that caught me completely off guard. Fortunately, none of us came together, and we would settle back in. So now we had Alonso's teammate for the Alpine team of Esteban Ocon just behind myself in 19th place. Nicholas Latifi, fellow Canadian, in 20th place there, as I have a lot of oversteer out of turns 1. A little bit later on lap 5, you're going to see me consistently asking what's going on with the weather, and we were just being told that there's still quite a bit of heavy rain on the way here. So it didn't look like it was going to be changing up anytime soon, but if it lights up a little bit, we can definitely move on to that intermediate tire. But now with the pace being so slow through these corners, everybody was just in a train basically, and it was really tough to pass. And I was now on lap 7, and I was right on the gearbox of Antonio Giovinazzi. He's behind his teammate of Kimi Räikkönen. We know Räikkönen in the final few races of his Formula 1 careers, he is retiring at the end of the season. Who is going to go into that seat? It could be myself, even if we have to take that role, but I don't know if I want to be with the Alfa Romeo team. I don't think it would be much of an improvement, as we still find ourselves in the Haas F1 car battling these guys on a consistent basis. So as we were now right still on that gearbox of Giovinazzi, I'm just hoping for a slip up, and that would kind of happen here now on the exit of the hairpin there, coming to that long straightaway. Giovinazzi had a bit of a hiccup right there. He couldn't get quite going, and that would allow myself to get close to him, close enough to try and make a move down into the corner, and that gets very close right there with Antonio, but fortunately it doesn't result in contact. We go a little bit wide right there and continue side by side into the right-hander, but now we find ourselves ahead and get established in the 17th position, but it's going to fight back there for a quick second on the right-hand side, a bit of a switchback back from Antonio Giovinazzi, but it's not going to be enough. We stay in front of him and take over P17. So it took about 7.5 laps to make that pass, but we did make it happen. Nice comparison back to the Spain GP earlier this season when it took us about 33 laps to even attempt to pass Nicholas Latifi, and we still couldn't complete it. So now as we came through, though, to the end of lap 8, we have a bunch of drivers coming into the pit lane, including my teammate and myself. We're going to try to double stack onto the intermediate tire. Now they have determined, Jeff has, he said, okay, you know what, it's time to go on to a bit of a better compound here with the intermediate tire. So I decided to take a risk and double stack it. I felt like we were just far back enough to complete the double stack successfully, and I was wrong. We do get held up by about a second or two, but now they do throw on the intermediate tire. But in the long run, it didn't hurt us too bad because other drivers were being held up as well. And look, we actually end up right on the gearbox of Yuki Tsunoda, a fellow rookie of ours, definitely rookie of the season so far here now, as I myself haven't put up much of a fight to him now as we come through turns 1. So now the goal was to stick with him and try to put the fight to him. But pit stops, of course, happening elsewhere and the end of lap 9 as well as lap 10. But before that happens, we actually have a caution in front of us. It's the fellow Canadian and Aston Martin driver of Lance Stroll. You see smoke pouring out of the back of that car. He's going to pull off the track and get way out of dodge. That is not going to result in a virtual safety car or a safety car, and everybody keeps it going safely. Now is Lewis Hamilton at the end of lap 9. Valtteri Bottas, by the way, I forgot to highlight, he had already pitted on the same lap as us. Lewis Hamilton, though, comes into the pit lane at the end of lap 9. Coming to lap 10, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Lando Norris going to follow through as well. There you see the intermediate go on to Hamilton's car, but where is Bottas going to come out? When he pitted, he was still out in front of Lewis Hamilton, and out of the final turn down the front straightaway. It could be a little bit close. We're about to see what happens here between the two Mercedes drivers. This is a huge moment right here in the race, and Valtteri Bottas remains in front of Lewis Hamilton by quite a good margin. So Lewis now is going to have to make up over 2 seconds if he wants to get to the back gearbox again of Valtteri Bottas. Now, as I started lap 10, Esteban Ocon tried to do the overcut on us. He pits a lap later, and I was not having any of it. I said, no, that's not happening. We're going to get ourselves back out in front of you, and it actually didn't take too much right there. Of course, him getting back up to speed on the colder tires than ourselves. We, of course, had our tires up to better temperatures after 1 lap of racing. So we found ourselves back in front in P16. Schumacher, by the way, putting up a really good pace here today in the United States GP, well up in front of myself by about 8 to 9, 10 seconds even at this point in the GP. But now you can see we were close to Yuki Tsunoda as well as George Russell. I think Russell was holding up Tsunoda, and we got a pretty good exit similar to when we were able to pass Giovinazzi a few laps ago on lap 8. And here we are, overtake on the ERS, closing into the gearbox of Tsunoda. We're going to try the exact same thing we did on Giovinazzi. He goes defensive, but we even go more aggressive than his defense, and into the corner we go, side by side, nearly wheel-to-wheel contact, but fortunately it does not result in any contact whatsoever. Yuki is just going to settle in behind myself. We move up into the now 15th position and try to run down the Williams driver of George Russell. I didn't think that was going to be too much of a challenge, the worst car in the field, and we just had not too hard of a time passing a car that's significantly better than the Williams. But now on lap 14, we were actually not able to quite get past George Russell yet. We had run him down, but I was struggling to find an opportunity to pass him. It took all the way until lap 18. Right here you see he doesn't get quite out of that hairpin as good as myself, and I already knew at this point this was all ours because I knew he wasn't going to have a whole lot. So overtake again on the ERS to the back of that gearbox of the Williams driver, George Russell. Now not much he can do as we go down towards that 90-degree left-hand turn now, as we are going to complete the pass, and not even off the course that time like when we passed the Alfa Romeo, but a switchback from George Russell allows him to battle back on the left-hand side, but we allow ourselves to still get in front of him now as we came through, though, on the end of lap 18. Bottas into the pit lane for a second set of intermediate tires. Is Lewis Hamilton going to do the same thing, or is he going to try and stretch his tires to the end of this GP? That's a big question, because I myself was going to actually take my intermediates as long as I could, because I knew that the rain was supposed to apparently stop before this GP came to a close. My hope was that the rain was going to give up with maybe 6-5 laps to go, and then it dries up within a lap or two, and then we can put on the dry tire and go a good 3-4 laps if possible, if we're really lucky, and make up all the time we give up anyways with the pit stop and then some. So I myself was going to stretch it, but my teammate like Mick Schumacher as well as multiple other drivers were going to come in for a second set of intermediate tires. As you see the rest of the grid order at this time, Right now, Nicholas Latifi, the last driver, running only one DNF so far, and that is the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. So as we came through, though, to the end of lap 19, here comes Lewis Hamilton. He decides he's not going to risk stretching the intermediate tires, and that's going to bring in the scenario of, is Valtteri Bottas going to be able to get back out in front of Lewis? Lewis is out of the pit box now. Here comes Valtteri out of the final turn down this front straightaway. It looks like it's going to be way closer than it was last time around, and here we go. We're about to find out what is going to happen right here between these two drivers, and it's going to be Bottas again out in front of Lewis Hamilton. But you can see Lewis definitely closer than last time, but it's still going to be nearly impossible without an issue to Bottas's car for Lewis to get in front of him. By the way, going back to the end of lap 19 for myself, or the end of lap 18, by the way, actually it was, Mick Schumacher, he had come into the pit lane like I had mentioned. So now we had stayed out, like I said, compared to the other drivers, and we weren't the only one trying the strategy for Verstappen in front of us. Gasly, they were trying to stay out, as well as the drivers in front of them. So we were up in a P12 because of this, and we were holding our own pace. Schumacher P13, he was about 10 seconds behind, and he couldn't close the gap. He was at the very beginning of the second set of intermediate tires for himself. He was definitely closing in on me, but then it started to stabilize around 9.5 seconds, and then we pulled back out to almost 11 seconds ahead, and that was really it. We had no pressure. We, of course, have no chance of running down anybody in front of us, and Schumacher and Raikkonen behind myself cannot close in at this point. Only 3 laps to go in this GP, and it's still Valtteri Bottas out in front over Lewis Hamilton, but not by a whole lot at this point here. So just trying to bring it home now, as I was surprised that the rain did not come to an end. We come straight through to the final lap of this GP, and it was still raining here in the United States. You can see the tires were a little bit questionable at this point, but it looked like we were going to get to the end of this GP in a safe manner. So we clearly made the right call here, deciding to stretch out the intermediates. It wasn't the way I planned it. I was thinking we're just going to stretch them out enough to where everybody has to pit for the dry tires again, and we're already going to be in front of the guys that had pitted, and we're going to gain a bunch of time that way. But instead, no, we're stretching it right to the end of this GP. Yet another performance from ourselves here with this Haas F1 car with strategy that has allowed us to get a way better finish than what we originally were going to get. We were going to be, 14th, 15th or so, but up front on this final lap, Valtteri Bottas is going to defend enough over his teammate of Lewis Hamilton as he rounds through the final turn. The championship battle isn't over yet as Bottas wins the United States Grand Prix over Lewis Hamilton to close up that gap to, I believe, 8 points now, as that battle gets closer and closer with the final 4 races of the season coming up after today. Carlos Sainz is going to hold on for 3rd place, a podium for the Ferrari driver. Perez in 4th, way better than his teammate Max Verstappen, who just had an off day as well, starting further down the grid with penalties and whatnot. Did not help him whatsoever with these track conditions. It makes it very hard for anybody to pass. Now, Vettel in P8, Alonso 9th, Pierre Gasly 10th, Verstappen not even in the points, and there you have myself here now as we were closing in on the end of this final lap of this United States of America GP. What a race it was. You know, it wasn't the most action-packed GP, but in terms of just dealing with the conditions and a few clutch passes, a clutch start for Bottas, it was one heck of an action-packed GP in that sense. Now, as we come through towards that penultimate turn, 0 pressure from behind, now 11 seconds to our teammate of Mick Schumacher, now down towards that final turn, and it is going to be a strong 12th place finish for us here in the United States GP now, as I believe that might even get us driver of the day for like the 5th or 6th time this season at this point. Is it going to be? Here we go, we're about to find out, and yes, it is going to be us getting driver of the day here, as we got some post-race celebrations up on the podium here in the USA.
That's a spectacular victory then, and with it, the championship is secure. It's been a magnificent season, and they thoroughly deserve the cheers of the crowd here today. Anthony Davidson, what helped them deliver this result, do you think?
Well, they clearly have a car that comes alive in the kind of conditions we were dealing with today. It's a very balanced package in the wet, and what that means is that the drivers have confidence to attack. And having that confidence gets you on the power earlier, it lets you brake later, and can put you a long way up the road.
Mercedes are on top form once again after an excellent race weekend. It's great to see them up on that podium once again.
What a race it was for Bottas now, as he did not get the fastest lap, so Lewis gets that extra point with the fastest lap, and I think that's what did bring it to 8 points between the two. We're about to see the point standings here in just a second. Nicholas Latifi still ended up a lap down, very unfortunate for him, and of course Lance Stroll with the DNF. So here we have the standings, and yes, 8 points it is, so that fastest lap right there from Hamilton could be a deciding factor in the title at the end of this season. It would be 7 points if he didn't pull off that fastest lap. There you see Mercedes, by the way, did lock up the Constructors' Championship in that performance right there in the United States. So it's just going to come down between now the two drivers to go at it for the actual Drivers' Championship. So still doing some R&D stuff. I decided to do a front wing end plates upgrade here now as I was looking at that, and I was like, you know what, we might as well go for it. I was thinking about rushing it, but I decided not to. And it should be ready going up to the Australian GP. So definitely a great overall performance from us. I felt like, you see, by the way, Schumacher's focus continues to drop. It's down to a 64. I don't know how his focus gets affected. Maybe if it's because of me beating him again. I really don't know how that works, but nonetheless, his focus right now isn't that great. And hopefully with the final 4 races coming up here with Mexico, Brazil, Australia, and then Abu Dhabi, hopefully he can find a way to get some points now. As always, though, if you guys enjoyed this episode, you do know what to do. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time of your day to watch this episode and other ones of the F1 series and any videos on my channel in general. 4 races remain here in the season, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Before we end it, just want to say a thank you to the Go One Racing members on the channel of MJ, Joseph 9001, Timothy Arline, Bubba Jr., Brett Durward, Dark Gengar Gaming, AJ Visura, Russell Dixon, Kenneth Barnett, Dana9302, Speed Demon 341, as well as Illinois Diecast. I appreciate you guys' support so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.